members and friends of Voice for Israel, welcome. This is a special interview which has been arranged to give you a chance to hear insights into the United Arab Emirates peace agreement from a well-known local now expert, Dr. Nachman Shal. And we have a special guest who has agreed to join us. She is the Consul General for the Southeast for the Israeli Consulate in Atlanta, the wonderful Anat Sultan Dadon, who has already made herself known in our community. Dr. Shai has just arrived here in Durham to be an Israeli Institute visiting professor at Duke. He just finished the same position at Emory. He has very graciously agreed to share his time and knowledge with the members and friends of the Voice for Israel on the announcement of the historic peace agreement between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. Nachman is a former member of the Knesset and has served in the role as Senior Vice President and Director General of the Jewish Federations of North America for Israel, and has written a book called Media Wars, which has won a literary prize. He has served on countless other senior positions in many areas, including science, military, he has the rank of general, and editor. He's a journalist and government minister in the past as well. And welcome, Nachman. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert and Peter. I think many thanks to Anat to join us. Anat is our Consul General in Atlanta, and I may say we are good friends. And I thank everyone else on this call for taking the time at the eve of Shabbat. But anyhow, schools are closed, so you have to stay home, I guess. No alternative, no competition by any synagogue around. The past 36 hours were very exciting, I would say, for every Israeli, and I believe for every Jew as well. From day one, before but after 1948, Israel was looking for recognition and normal relations with its neighbors. It is in our Declaration of Independence. It's specified very well, and it was the message that we have been sending since the beginning of the day, the first days of the State of Israel. Unfortunately, there were more wars than peace treaties in our history. And now we can proudly count the third one. The first was with Egypt, the second with Jordan. And this is it's not peace yet. I'm very careful, but it may hopefully lead to a full peace between us and the United Arab Emirates. As a matter of fact, this this country is not new to many Israelis. For over 20 years, there were tacit relations under what people say under the table. The volume of trade between us and the United Arab Emirates is now around $1 billion, so it's quite a lot of money. There were defense and intelligence contacts, and it became quite normal to visit, for many Israelis to visit the United Emirates, but it was not a peace yet. And after yesterday, I hope we got to a new stage in our relations. And it's a kind of breakthrough because we do believe that it's not the last state that will join this direction. At least two other Arab states, Oman and Bahrain, are now on the list, and they soon, hopefully, will join the United Emirates. I would say that it works, this development is very encouraging, at least for two of the three partners. As far as I can, first of all, it's very helpful in terms of Netanyahu as a prime minister, first of all, and it's a state, it's not only its personal achievement, but it's a state of Israel achievement, but it will probably work for his benefit as well. He's a politician, very experienced, and he knows very well how to play the game in Israel politically, and I assume that will be a major factor now in the internal relations and domestic relations between him and his coalition partners. And if elections are coming soon, I don't know how soon, but they may take place even not this year, next year. This is one of the secrets that he may use in order to be re-elected again. It works very well for the United States president. There's no doubt about that. He obviously will make it his own flag now. I'm not sure how much it interests every single American. There are other issues right now on the American people's mind, the corona, the economic situation. But yes, it is something that the president can be proud of. We all remember he said he's going to introduce the deal of the century. I don't see yet the deal of the century here, but something was done. We have all to admit that. And if it works well, then we may see, as I said before, some other Arab countries joining in. In this context, I should say a few words about the issue of annexation or applying sovereignty, which was very high on the Israeli agenda in the past few months. And as far as I can see from my own perspective as I would say, former politician, I'm not sure it will come back soon at all, or if it comes back soon, it will not be in the same high profile. And now, as an Israeli, I believe this is the right way. If it's a trade-off between annexation and peace, I think the best solution is to proceed with peace process, keep the situation on the West Bank as is. It's important to stay there as long as we don't have any political agreement between us and the Palestinians. Security-wise, there's no doubt about that. I'm not getting into the borders and the boundaries of the future Palestinian state, but it seems like for the time being, let's continue on that route. Do not touch the fragile situation. At the same time, Netanyahu, as some people said today, gave nothing and got back a lot, which is a good deal, by the way. It's a very good deal, because he didn't pay anything. He paid with something he hasn't done. Not that he annexed already parts of the West Bank and now he has to return them or to give up on them. He hasn't done anything. He just discussed it publicly. He just make it his own election campaign slogan. He used it a lot, but practically nothing has happened. So just the threat of annexation brought help to bring the United Arab Emirates to finally make this decision, and so it's a good deal, and it's a good deal for the president as well. Elections are in the horizon. He has to come up with something that will help him, especially in a week like that, when the Democrats had a very attractive and powerful candidate for vice president. This is a good timing for him. It happened 24 hours later, so maybe it helped him a little bit to change the political discourse in this country. I don't know, but I think so. I would like to go now and discuss the United Arab Emirates. As I said before, it's not a new game at all. Israelis were frequent travelers and visitors in United Arab Emirates, especially defense and intelligence experts. If you look at the map, you see how close the United Arab Emirates is to Iran. And now just think about this situation where you have on our border two proxies of Iran, Hezbollah in the north and Hamas in the south. They are very close to Iran. Iran has been supporting them, equipping them with arms, and making them its own extended hands to pose Israel with immediate threat on its borders and even to the heart of the country. Hamas on the south and in the north, Hezbollah. Now Israel has a kind of a friendly state not far relatively from Iran. And if they look at the map, said, okay, something has changed is strategically in the Middle East geopolitical situation. Israel has an access to, she has had it before in other ways, but this is something on the ground, not far from Iran. So Iran actually has played a role in this new chapter in Israeli-Arab relations, because when the Americans now look backward to the relationship between United States and Iran, when finally the Americans actually abandoned the idea that one day they will interfere with the nuclear preparation of Iran, and they reach an agreement with Iran finally. Many of the Arab states in our region, including Saudi Arabia, including United Arab Emirates, including other small states which have no any military power, to look at Israel as the only state in the Middle East that can observe and deter the Iranians. It's all about Israel. So they looked at Israel as the next, as a replacement, not as big as and not as impressive one, but as a significant replacement to the United States. If United States is not ready to play the game from its own reasons, here is Israel with quite a major military power, can access and have an access to the Persian Gulf, in the air, in the sea, other ways, cyber. They said to themselves, so this is the place where we can all look at as the power that will block Iran. And they, even if they would have been watching television and listening to all kinds of media outlets in the Middle East, they realized that once in a while, Israeli aircraft or other aircraft from somewhere attacked Iranian forces in Syria, and did run quite an impressive campaign against the idea or the strategic plan of Iran to extend its influence to other states in the Middle East. So Israel not only spoke about that, but took some action, which probably impressed those Arab states and others that haven't done anything so far. So for the United Arab Emirates, it's a significant decision, significant step as well. They have gone through a certain decision-making process, which is quite impressive, because they realize that it's not enough. They should go a little bit further. And they did pay something, which now I'll talk about the other partner, the Palestinians. The Palestinians had what they had in mind, that no other Arab countries will sign or make relations, normalization relation between them and Israel, unless the Palestinian issue will be removed out of the table, which means that there'll be an agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, the end of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. This was a kind of condition. It's no longer there. I still remember from my days in the Knesset that we were arguing a lot between us. I was a member of the opposition and the government, and we said, okay, why don't you proceed with the kind of peace process with Arab states? And the answer was, well, we tried, but they always said, okay, first tackle with the Palestinian issue and then come back to us. The priorities changed. And now Arab states, and that's why this precedent is so important. There's this Arab state that even without any progress, unfortunately, I would say, unfortunately, between us and the Palestinians, is ready to take this path and to normalize relations with Israel. This is a precedent for the Palestinians. And when they put in fire and then they burned the United Emirates flag this afternoon in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, they knew very well why. The Palestinians are frustrated that they were betrayed by that state, and they are very much concerned that once the precedent was broken, there'll be more and more Arab states following them. Well, there are many reactions in the Arab world. You may assume that Iran is very much upset about that, and that makes us a little bit concerned, because we have a rise now in the terror level in our southern border. And as I said before, Iran can play the game, and she had an access to Israel, even if it's not directly, because we already pushed them out of the Golan Heights and hopefully from the entire Syrian soil. But they still have some two players to play with. But I'm not sure that they will use Hezbollah these days after the disaster in Lebanon in the past 2 weeks. The Hezbollah will be very careful to do anything, because the Lebanese anyhow are very much concerned about the growing power of Hezbollah within Lebanon. So probably Hezbollah will remain quiet, but Hamas, well, maybe. So you can see this is quite a delicate game here between Israel and Iran. Of course, the Egyptians are pleased with that. Jordan hasn't been outspoken, but I guess they do too. The more Arab states are joining in, and that will help this process to continue and to produce more treaties or similar situations between us and Arab states. So I think this is, I have more to say about that, and I can discuss for sure what will be going on within Israel now, because you may guess that it will, as I said briefly, that also have implications about the situation with Israel. Now and his family were really under kind of public scrutiny recently for many reasons. Demonstrations were growing and growing every weekend and even during the weeks. It will be interesting to watch how the internal situation will develop now. Blue and white, their partners in this national unity government are not really taken into account in the Likud eyes. They've not even been briefed by the prime minister before the decision. Yes, the head of the alternate prime minister and the foreign minister, both of them were told about this development almost after it was announced. Only a few minutes before, they had a chance to learn about it. They were not told anything before. So that's not a compliment to this national unity government. But it is in Israel, and the Israeli politics is another world. I don't know if hours and days will be sufficient to describe what's going on within Israel and how it works. But if you want to ask me questions about it.
Nachman, you have covered a lot of the questions that I had in mind.
Okay.
I'd like to give Mike first a chance to ask a couple of questions, and then we'll turn to Anat and maybe some questions that might appear on the Q&A session. Again, a reminder to those who joined us late, we have a Q&A opportunity for you, and we will look at your questions and try to get them in. Mike, go ahead. You're muted.
Thank you for joining with us today, and thank you, Anat, for being willing to come on as well. We're so honored to have you both. One of the things that I'm always interested in is that when agreements are made between the leadership of Arab countries, now this is really the third nation that's done that, how important is that relative to the street in their respective countries? That is, if the Arabs who live in the country are not particularly friendly disposed towards Israel, is that a problem? Is it a problem for the government? Does it diminish the significance of the event or not? Should that be of concern?
Let Anat answer first. I have my own view, but let Anat, because we remember that at least the first Arab leader to make peace with Israel was assassinated by his own people. So that's maybe a direction. But Anat, I'm eager to hear you.
With pleasure. Thank you. First of all, I've joined unplanned, and thank you for facilitating this. It's always a pleasure to see you, Mike and Bob, and always an honor and a pleasure to see you, Nachman. I have to say, Nachman is not a diplomat with the Israeli Foreign Service, but he's one of the most phenomenal representatives of the State of Israel, regardless which of the many hats he wears and has worn over the years. And with regards, with regards to the specific question, I will say there is no doubt that there is a challenge, and the normalization of relations is not something that that can and should be something that stays on the level of those who sign an agreement. But ultimately, the reasons that bring a leader to sign such an agreement are the benefit for his own country and for his own people. And I think that the many different fields which are currently under discussion between Israel and the UAE, the agreements to be signed, hopefully the plan is to have an agreement signed in September in Washington, with a range of issues covered in that agreement for cooperation in so many different fields that are of mutual benefit. And that mutual benefit, economically, health-wise, defense, in so many fields, that is something that that is of importance to the people on both sides, and can be explained also by leadership to their people. It is not an agreement that comes in a vacuum. There is a reason why the leadership chose to proceed, just as there was a reason why then Egyptian and Jordanian leaders chose to proceed and sign a peace agreement with Israel, because it is in their own interest, first and foremost.
Do you think this is going to be a warmer peace, Anat, than the one with Jordan and Egypt?
Well, I think that we are in a different situation. The UAE is not. It is now the third and not the first to be making such a move, but we are also in 2020, and I think sufficient to look at the language of the joint statement of the United States, the State of Israel, and the UAE, which was published yesterday. The language is very strong, referring not only to the full normalization, but referring to the range of fields in which we are seeking to cooperate and establish those relations. I think that we are really at a very pivotal moment in history. And Nachman referred also to the change in the equation, and that change in the equation is a very critical change. The fact that we can start pursuing progress with Arab and Muslim countries, detached from where we are with regards to the conflict vis-a-vis the Palestinians. That really is a very critical moment.
Remember that they are not in the first, what we call the first circle of the neighboring Arab countries. The first priority has always been to sign peace agreements or normalize relations with the neighboring countries, with Egypt, Jordan, Syria. We failed, they failed, we failed, and Lebanon, which was many years a quiet state, so there were no problems. This was the first, but then this is a breakthrough in terms of reaching very far from our borders into the Arab world. Remember, there are 1.7 billion Muslims in the world. This is also a message for them that Israel can be accepted, that Israel is a partner, that Israel can help them. And I fully agree with Anat that there's the game of interest here. It's not only about values. We all want to believe in values. The United Arab Emirates have, as I said, and probably more than one reason to join in and to be working closely with Israel. And they know, and they just check the balance, what they are paying for, what they are getting in return. And probably they can figure out the Palestinians in this stage have not too much to offer to them, maybe just the opposite. For the Palestinians, as we already discussed many times, they believe that time works for them. They can wait for generations. Finally, they will beat Israelis demographically and take over the entire Eretz Israel. It doesn't work like that. United Emirates proved to them that time is working against them. The Palestinians constantly turn down all peace proposals. The last one was the Trump one, but there were previous ones, very generous. I tell you, they will never be given what they have been offered by Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak at the time. They will never be given that any longer, especially because the Israeli public opinion will not let any Israeli prime minister to go that far towards the Palestinian. So they keep losing the game, as we used to say. They always miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. So this is another one. They can they can join in a way, even before. But now, even now, take advantage of that if I were them. But they keep saying no, and they remain behind. And the world goes on. The world goes on. They don't wait for them any longer. I'm sure there will always be partners in the Arab world that will continue to look for another military clash and to defeat Israel militarily. But the message from United Arab Emirates is not only they are not going to fight the Israelis, we would like to have the Israelis next to us in our security challenge there. They are much more afraid and concerned from Iran than from Israel. This is the message. Israel in this context is a friend relative vis-a-vis the Iranians. And Iran positioned himself in a place where they threaten the Arab world, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, others. So here is a partner, and making Israel suddenly a partner in this strategic situation, this is the major news. And of course, I feel it's the right one because militarily we are there, technologically we are there, and all other areas that we can use our soft power that Anat is an expert on, medicine, corona, agriculture. There'll be no cultural events in our United Emirates, and Israeli singers will not travel to sing there. That I assure you, and Israeli writers and also will not perform there. Okay, not, but that's the way it is in the Middle East. And we base this on a different basis. And interest is enough for a foundation, for a solid foundation to build relations between us and our partners. So with all the respect to what the people of the United Emirates think, I don't know what they think. They may love the Israelis and like them when they finally see them. They may not, but this doesn't care. The leader of the United Arab Emirates doesn't care very much what those people think. He was not elected by them, and he knows how to run the country, which is not purely democracy. Okay, if I put it mildly.
I have an interesting practical question from one of our listeners, in particular Sharon Halpern, who is, by the way, somebody you'll be meeting, Nachman. She is the head of the Holocaust Speakers Bureau in North Carolina. She asks, can you comment on the possible economic consequences for both Israel and Palestine, as well as the UAE, on the agreement involving trade, natural gas, medical tourism, air travel, and other examples come to mind. What do you think is going to happen in the next year or so as a result of this in those areas?
Anat would like to start. I make Anat a partner of mine. I like it. We start performing as a couple.
We won't charge you.
You don't charge me as well. Okay, Anat, say a few words and I'll follow you.
Well, I can just say, as I referred to the joint statement really does list a very long range of fields in which both sides are looking to cooperate in. Of course, there are so many opportunities and potentials economically in addressing joint challenges, whether it's a water, agriculture, environment, high tech, and now COVID-19, which already there are discussions on how to cooperate in that regard. I think there is a lot of room for potential, and this coming year, I think will be an opportunity to pursue that. I can't give a forecast to what exactly economic relations are going to look like a year from now, but I know that there is much potential, and I know that there is an interest on both sides to pursue that potential.
Does that potential include the Palestinians? Will they also benefit?
First of all, let me relate to the other aspect. I think I still remember, since I'm a little bit older than Anat, that when we first signed peace with Egypt, there were big dreams, and the Israelis are coming, and they may take over Egypt. And this was because we said, okay, we are going to offer you so much opportunity. So we have to be cautious and careful, not to jump on them, okay? Because I can imagine that tomorrow night, there'll be already full aircraft going to this country, to United Emirates, offering them all kinds of ideas with Israeli business people coming to do. Wait, don't scare them. There is something called Israeli imperialism. This is a kind of imperialism, and they know what imperialism is. So be careful. Let it run normally. There are huge opportunities. I totally agree, but we don't have to take it one at a time. Let's wait and let things do. As I already said, it has been developed for 20 years. The volume of trade between Israel and the United is already over $1 billion, so we are there. They don't need Israeli energy and natural gas. They can give us a lot of what they have, but they do need Israel. But let's work it in a way that we are equal, equal basis. We are not going to show them that we know more than them and that we are much smarter and we develop at states and now we'll develop theirs. No, they have achieved a lot by themselves. We are not going to tell them how to run their own country. We are not going to be democratic and to tell them what democracy is. We have to accept it. They've done a lot of things by themselves and approach them in a way that will not scare them. That's the basic idea, because otherwise the reaction will be terrible. And I'm telling you what happened already with Egypt at the time, because there were similar situations and Israelis started to go to Egypt and say, no way, wait, there'll be resistance if we choose this way. About the Palestinians, as I said before, the Palestinians could have easily been a bridge between Israel and the Middle Eastern country. They could be part of this process. They should be in that process, because otherwise they're going to lose. That's what I believe in. And I belong politically to the camp that was trying very much to proceed on the peace process. After Oslo, before Oslo, we've done everything. It's over. And not only because of Israel. We blame our government. Between us, I can blame them as well, because I think that their policy to reject any peace plan and to not even refuse to negotiate and to talk to the Israelis didn't produce any positive outcome. And now when they calculate the situation, they figure out that they were left behind. They were left behind, and that doesn't serve them for sure.
So a question came up. It's a difficult question, but I just want to make an observation, first of all, before I ask my question. It seems like there's been a reversal of causation. It used to be, you kind of alluded to it, was said that relations with the Arab countries had to wait until the Palestinians made peace. Now it may be that peace may come as a result, or the prospects for peace may at least be increased by having relations with Arab countries. But my question is regarding settlement, annexation. Mm-hmm. And obviously is that just the reason, is it a nice reason that the UAE can say, we're doing this to forestall annexation for something they actually wanted to do anyways? They wanted to make this agreement with Israel. And how does the subject of annexation play with the politics in Israel? So sort of two separate questions.
Yeah. First of all, the annexation, the proposed selection, the deliberation on annexation helped them to produce a kind of a pretext why they took this direction. They said, okay, why do you have to praise us for what we have done? Because now the Israelis are not going to annex any territory. You see how nice we are. We are actually helping the Palestinians, because by making this gesture towards Israel, we received a commitment. And I'm sure there is a commitment here that Bibi Netanyahu will not disclose, but Trump did yesterday, last night when he spoke, he said, it's not on the table any longer, a kind of. Oh, it was suspended. Well, suspended is maybe for for a long time. And I hopefully believe there'll be no annexation, there'll be agreement between the two states. So I think that that helped very much United Arab Emirates to explain why they took this step. Secondly, what was the second half of your question? I forgot.
How is it going to play in the politics of Israel? Because
in the politics of Israel,
the right wing that
it's interesting. It's interesting. It's very interesting. First of all, we don't know yet. It's really premature. I said, first of all, I'd like to see the impact on the demonstrations, because 90% of the demonstrators love this development. They love the idea that we're going to see. Of course, they don't trust Netanyahu. And the reason they are coming to protest is not because there was no peace. Peace has not been a major player in the Israeli political arena for a long time. Too bad, but it's there. The issues they are coming to protest are to do with Netanyahu's personal behavior and whatever the Jerusalem court is going to discuss from January on for quite a long time. So this is the reason. But there should be a certain balance here, and I'd like to see how it will be played. Secondly, the annexation and the settlement. There's something to learn also for the settlers. Give me 1 minute to explain. They were not pleased and happy with the 10% or 20% annexation that Netanyahu was offering to them. They had big appetite. They said, no way, not only the Jordan Valley. We would like the blocks. We would like to see that, the remote settlements, actually everything. They ended up with nothing. So there's a lesson here. And I'm sure that between themselves, they've been talking about that. They had an opportunity, which I'm not saying, sure it was the right one, but let's say Jordan River, something given the Jordan border. Okay, there are some regions to keep Israeli forces in the Jordan River, Jordan Valley, I accept it. But their appetite, they had, because they said Trump is in the White House, as long as Trump is there, we can get much more. And everyone has someone in the White House, secret sources telling them, don't stop here, ask for more, we'll help you. And probably evangelist leaders were preaching to them, yes, much more, much more. The outcome is nothing in this case. How much it's going to affect Israeli politics? They are not moving to the left. And that they are not going to vote for Meretz and for blue and white next time. I believe the major bloc of the right wing in Israel, which makes like 60% of the Jewish people, the Jewish community in Israel, will remain 60%. They may vote for Bennett, and maybe they will forgive and forget and wait, but still remain in. They don't want suddenly that the center left will take over. They are not going to change their political view. That's what I believe in. They're going to vote for right-wing parties. And if it's not Likud, it will be Bennett. If not Bennett, there'll be another party there. But remember one lesson, which is, by the way, that take you historically to Ben Gurion. Okay, let's speak about Ben Gurion. I mean, just it reminded me. Ben Gurion in 1948, what was the dilemma? To take the partition resolution and to have a mini Israel, or to be waiting for a day that we can get all Eretz Israel. And his historic decision to take what we could at the time was the most important probably decision in our generation, or in many generations of Jewish people. First of all, that historically, finally, we extended the borders of Israel. But secondly, it was either or. Either have a small state or not to have a Jewish state at all. And had we missed this opportunity in 1948, there was no Jewish state today, I can assure you. So this is the kind of decisions that even the settler should have been. Take what you can. Take what you can. Be modest. Don't ask for more what you cannot get. Get that and stay and still wait for better and more opportunities in the future. They missed it. I'm not upset about it. I think that annexation would have been disaster to Israel. Just the opposite. The reaction in the Arab world would have been terrible, including Lebanon and Gaza and the Palestinians and other Arab states. This is totally different direction. That's why I'm so encouraged by that. It takes us to, we better speak about peace than annexation. Just imagine Anat had to explain to Americans, to American media and American politicians, why Israel annexed this part of the Jordan, of the West Bank or another part. Now she has to explain why Israel is making peace. Believe me, it's much easier for her as Consul General to talk about peace with American counterparts and not about annexation. That's the way it is.
Let me change gears a little bit. I have two related questions, and either one of you can answer it. First of all, is there any possibility of any Muslim or Arab countries punishing the UAE in any way? And the other is sort of a flip of that. Do you think it's more likely that other Arab states will follow the lead of the UAE?
Would you like?
Well, I will just say briefly, and there was reference to this in the joint statement as well. Absolutely, there is an expectation that and a hope that others will follow suit, and that others will follow suit in the near foreseeable future. I don't think that it will take another 20 years for us to see progress with another Arab and or Muslim country. That is something that is in progress and has been in progress. With regards to how others will react, I think that we need to see, and many are watching to see how the dust settles on this. But of course, we are seeing that there are those who, even among those with whom we have diplomatic relations, we are seeing some more pleased and some less pleased by this development. And it's interesting to watch, because when people are so adamant on reminding Israel of the importance of peace, when such an announcement is made, for it not to be embraced by everyone is really an intriguing phenomenon, but one that is interesting to watch and understand dynamics in our region as well.
I would say the following. United Arab Emirates wouldn't have done it without the support of Saudi Arabia, okay? This is the big brother in the family. So there's no way that they can scare those, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab. First of all, financially, they are there. And secondly, what kind of punishment? The Arab League is not any longer such a major power within the Arab. And there are Arab countries already divided, Sunnis, Shias, pro, against. So there are different directions. I don't see there taking any position. Maybe they condemn it, or that's no meaning whatsoever. So United Arab Emirates, and then as we all know, Bahrain and Oman are standing in line. If it works, they are just watching the scene. If they see that it works well and things are getting better and nothing happens, actually, they will join in. So hopefully they will not be waiting for too long. And another consideration, it's not only building relations with new countries, it's also strengthening the existing peace treaties. Remember, there was a deterioration, there is, in the peace treaty between Israel and Jordan. There are internal powers within Jordan calling for breaking the relations or severing the relations, not only diplomatic, but in general, between Jordan and Israel. It helps now the king of Jordan and Egypt as well. Don't forget the Muslim Brotherhood that were in power until, a few years ago. So there are internal powers also resisting or rejecting or opposing the peace treaty. So that not only helps the newcomers, but also the permanent residents in this situation that also need to get power. And I hope, by the way, that the United States, which has been a partner and a very important player in this marriage, will be involved as well in the years to come. It's not one shot. It doesn't fit exactly the policy of America first, but that's something else. United States should stay and help Jordan and Egypt and United Arab and other countries, and using its good services to convince other Arabs to join in. If it works good for Trump, I couldn't care less at this stage, because I'd like to see this camp within the Arab world growing. And at the end of the day, it will have the United States as well. But this is not my first concern is to make sure that Israel is safe and have partners in the Middle East, and our presence there is being accepted by more and more states. That's what I would like to see.
Nachman, nobody's surprised that Iran condemned it. And I'll also note that as last I heard, the Jewish Voice for Peace condemned it, which is another story. But are you surprised at all about Turkey's action? And what difference does that make?
Turkey is not a friend of Israel. Not for the first time. We all know that. Currently, there are other fronts between Israel and Turkey, which has to do with the Mediterranean, with Greece, and this is something different. Greece is now relying also on Israel to help it in its confrontation with Turkey in the Middle East. There is a big argument about gas, natural gas in the Middle East, and Turkey has big eyes. And with those big eyes, she sees many seas around her, and they would like to get not only from Greece, but also from Cyprus, portions of those rich natural gas resources that are under sea. So Turkey has already made a threat, again, about its relations with Israel. I wouldn't be surprised. I wish it was not the case. I think Turkey has been a friend of Israel for so many years, and one day it hopefully change. But Turkey made itself a major supporter of the Palestinians, and so I expect something may happen here. But Turkey also is involved in Libya and is going there and in Syria. So I don't know how it will work out. There are many issues. In this case, they need the Americans. In other case, they don't need the Americans, they need the Europeans. It's not such a simple matter. It's not as Israel against Turkey. Vis-a-vis Turkey, what does it do? So I will wait and see. But I know they made a certain threat to, again, severe diplomatic relations with Israel, to suspend them. Okay. And also the United Arab Emirates, maybe. We'll see. With Erdogan, you never know. With Erdogan, you never know where it'll go.
So I have a question that I hesitate to ask, but two people have asked, and I'll paraphrase, but what role do you think the current administration played in this? And, well, would this have happened if it hadn't been this administration?
I think that we should praise and compliment the US administration for that. There's no doubt about that. And I'm not Republican. I'm not an American citizen, and I'm not taking position, but I think that this administration has been working hard to make this progress. And they invested a lot. And I'm sure they also invested in American interest, which is important. UAE wouldn't do it unless they knew that it's fully backed by the United States and it can help them in the future as well. So the credit goes to Donald Trump and his staff, especially Jared Kushner and others. Probably there are many other players here that were involved. What's important from the Israeli perspective is that by gaining the Republicans and Trump, we didn't lose the Democrats. The Democrats came up and supported this development, this agreement, which is extremely important because on the other way around, had we annexed now territories, the Democrats have said it very clearly. We are not going to help you and support you. We will oppose it. They did say that now, before the elections. So that's what changed the whole discussion. That's what I said before. When I look at Anat, I mean, I'm trying to figure out how to make Anat's job easier. It's much easier to protect a peace between Israel and Arab states than annex territories. She would have done it anyhow because she's a professional diplomat. But back inside her, in her heart, I'm not sure which one she likes more. But even forget about it. Professionally, it's much easier to defend something positive than to defend on what is regarded as a negative step, okay, as is. So I'm sure that we, Israel, should immediately, as soon as possible, renew the bipartisan support in this country. We cannot tolerate a situation where there are so many spokespersons for the Democratic Party speaking about Israel, about annexation, about the Palestinians, about so on. That's something that we have to be aware of, especially at the eve of elections that may change dramatically the situation in the White House, in the Congress, and so on. We don't know what the outcome will be, but it may be. So we need, as it has ever been for 70 years, bipartisan support. Democrats and Republicans, they were always united around Israel. And I hope very much that this step will strengthen the internal powers within the Democratic Party to return to their original position vis-a-vis Israel, because it concerns me very much, if it's not. We're all familiar with the voices we are hearing within the Democratic Party, from Bernie Sanders, from other, we all know what we are talking about. So if it helps us with the Democrats, not less with the Republicans, it's a win-win situation. There's no doubt about it.
Sure. So
I will just very briefly add of course every word that Nachman is saying is spot on. It's a very, very important point to make, that there is a very strong bipartisan support for this move. And I have to say very frankly, we've seen a lot of support from both sides of the political map here, and from very many organizations, Jewish, Christian, others. It is also, I think, a time for self-reflection for those organizations who do not choose to support and commend such a move, because it does beg the question that then, if you do not support this and you cannot bring yourself to commend such a step, then where really do you lie with regards to Israel? Is it really about criticizing this or that policy, or is it about the refusal really to accept Israel in any situation? And I think that that this really is an opportunity to clear the air in that regard as well, because we have had so many approach us directly and indirectly condemning a decision that was not yet taken with regards to annexation, extension of sovereignty. I would like to see all of those who were supposedly supporters of peace stand strong on this as well.
Michael, I think we're close to the end here.
Well, I have one more question.
I know you've got some other remarks, so this is a good time.
No, well, no, but I have another question. I want to ask the question because it's from a Duke student who I know.
Duke
So
is priority.
be careful.
Yes.
Be careful. You got to answer this one well.
Okay.
And I also know her parents. The announcement included that the UAE and Israel will immediately expand and accelerate cooperation regarding the treatment of and the development of a vaccine for the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the question. Do you believe that the pandemic in some way accelerated the talks that led to this announcement?
I think it has a certain role. It has a certain role. First of all, as we said, under the table, I think there were some negotiations between Israel and United Arab Emirates. I think they helped us to get some medical equipment at the early stages of this pandemic, and maybe we helped them too. I hope so. And by the way, it was mainly by the Mossad, by the Israeli Mossad, which is leading, without hurting the importance of the foreign ministry at the time very much for. Most of the relations were handled by the Mossad as an intelligence organization, which has also a certain strategic view of relations, foreign relations as well. Sometimes it is not the right way, but in this case, I think they did a very good job. Yes, Israel is looking for money to develop its own vaccine. The Israeli Biological Institute, which situated somewhere in Israel and usually deals with other things, has developed, has made some breakthrough. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, they said, we are going to try and make the test on this vaccine. I'm not sure they're as advanced as some major corporation, and we, Israel, don't have the billions of dollars that you need. But I think that with more money, they can get to a certain place or better place where they are. We have only a few hundred people there, and most of the time they are engaged with other things, with something terrible called biological warfare that you don't want to hear about. So, but since the beginning of the coronavirus, they were focusing on that under the instructions of the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister, and they made some progress. They're smart people, but they are far away from all those huge pharmaceutical companies that can, play the game in a different way. But yes, I guess that if the United Arab Emirates will present or help them financially, they can make some progress. So that's better than other kind of relations that Israel has had in the past, like with South Africa, for example, on other matters, developing weapon system and so on. I like very much to see that kind of scientific cooperation between Israel and neighboring countries. That plays best to Israel's image, to the way we would like to present ourselves internationally, not only as a major military power, but also as a player on technology, high-tech, medicine, and agriculture, as Anat mentioned. That's the reputation I would like to have to Israel. Side by that, it's good to have a very strong military, but let's try and present Israel to the world, not only on the military basis, but on our other qualifications and virtues.
I want to say, having heard what Nachman just said, for the sake of many people who don't know, that in Israel, Nachman was known as the Great Calmer.
If I help to this time, yeah. It's a pleasure to be calmer than to be the opposite.
I'm going to make I'm going to take a 1-second interlude before we finalize this event. I want to promote Voice4Israel is having a program a week from yesterday. It'll be Thursday night at 7 o'clock. We're doing a Zoom webinar with Dr. Jonathan Shanzer, who's a Senior Vice President for Research at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. He's an expert on foreign affairs, and specifically on Israel and the Middle East. It should be a very stimulating and compelling conversation. I hope you can join us. I think we should, it's approaching 1 hour. It is 1 hour. I want to thank our guests. Is there anything more? Well, you've said it all so beautifully. And we share in the enthusiasm for what has happened. It's so great to have some good news. But thank you both for being here with us and spending the time. We know you're very busy people, and we appreciate it so much. And one more thing, there'll be a recording of this event to show to other people.
Don't share it with the government in Israel, because there will be concern about me. I was very critical of the government so far and so much, and suddenly I said give them some compliments, so that wouldn't work well for me.
You can hide out at my house for a while, Nachman.
I'm fine. Yeah, thank you, and you should thank Anat very much. It took the
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very nice of you.
She just, she was willing to participate without any preparation, so thank you.
Always with pleasure. Thank you for putting this on. And Nachman, always lovely to hear you really speaking, explaining, and representing Israel in such a beautiful way.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Anat.
Let me say Shabbat Shalom to all our viewers and to everyone who participated. Thank you all.
Okay.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Toda. Bye-bye.